Hey guys, so welcome to another WoW video. Today is World of Warcraft's official 20th anniversary. I know they've been celebrating it for the past month, but today is the actual day. And so November 23rd, 2004 is when this game came out. And that is also when I started. I knew about this game when it was in beta. And then I bought it when it released. I am older, so yeah, I'd already been following it. I played Warcraft 1 when I was I don't know, I was probably like 14 or 15 when that game came out, somewhere around there. And then I followed it up with Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3. And then, you know, World of Warcraft came out. I was also playing Diablo around that time as well. I had both Diablo and Warcraft on floppy disk. and yeah, it was some fun times. So Warcraft itself has been a part of more or less my entire life. You know, I was a kid when Warcraft came out, which was back in the 90s. And then, you know, World of Warcraft in 2004. World of Warcraft really came out at a great time because in 2004, online gaming was becoming mainstream. A lot of people think it happened in like 2010, but I consider it to have been kind of starting to become mainstream in 2004. You know, there were definitely a lot more people playing games, which is pretty much why it excelled, right? Like, I don't think WoW would have been... Like, would it have done good if it came out earlier? Of course. You know, it already had a fan base from the Warcraft games. But I just don't think it would have excelled as much as it did in the first couple of years if it had come out in, like, I don't know, 2000. Yeah. 2004 was just that sweet spot for launching an MMO. It was a time frame in gaming where a lot of people were really interested in MMOs and for the right reasons. Nowadays, people just collect stuff in these games, but back then, like, people actually played the game, and for more than just collecting, there was a social aspect. I find nowadays, people just really don't want to be social in the game. And yeah, it was just a whole different thing back then. Before I continue, because I meant to say this at the beginning, but this transmog that I'm wearing, I chose it today because this was my original transmog in vanilla. These pieces are vanilla pieces, minus the weapon and the offhand and the back piece. But, you know, the ensemble set you see here, back in the day, I always was kind of like a transmog person, but collection didn't exist back then. So in between raids, when a raid would end, I would have this in my bags, and I would go to a city and I'd swap it with my raiding gear, and we would just run around. And yes, I didn't wear any feet as transmog, because back then, the tough things to find that were nice was boots, shoulders, and headpieces. Like, yeah, those were the tough things to find that were nice. So, yeah. But I just thought I'd mention, you know, I got the Murloc on the back, which of course is not vanilla. But like I said, everything except for the back piece and the weapons. But yeah, so I thought it was fitting to be in the transmog I used back then. Also, we're playing my favorite music and we are in my favorite area. It might not look like it, but this is the garrison. I'm just in a building. But yeah, we are in the garrison. And as many people who view the channel, you know that the garrison's like my favorite place to just kind of chill, you know. I really enjoy it for like making content because it's kind of that one place that no one can come into, so no one really interrupts me. There's no NPCs that like speak out loud, you know, they just kind of wander around, and if you talk to them, they'll speak. But yeah, so it's like a nice content creation area. I like it. So continuing, so as far as World of Warcraft, I like to make things, as you guys know, I like this channel to be kind of happy, and I don't throw too much sadness in, but I feel like I can't tell my story of WoW without telling you a little sadness as well. I'm not going to go too much in detail, but back in 2004, you know, I picked up the game and I was hooked pretty much immediately. And 2005, some really bad shit had happened to me. Let's just say it was bad enough that I was on suicide watch. A lot of people were worried for my safety, and I isolated myself and pretty much made it so they had no idea where I was, so that they couldn't, you know, it's like when you're in a bad spot, the last thing you want is people being, are you okay? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, I didn't want any of that shit, so I cut them all off. And WoW was the thing that kept me going. WoW was my therapy. I refused to talk to anyone. I still don't talk about what happened back in 2005. And it's a very painful moment, and it has to do with a lot of deceit, a lot of loss, and death, and yeah, it was a very bad time in my life, and WoW helped me through that so much that back in, like, you know, fast forward to BFA, I guess, I had almost quit the game, and I had some friends really worried that quitting the game would remove all the progress of WoW helped me through. Yeah. So that is not why I still play the game. I still play the game because I love it, but I do remember that that was a worry to, you know, some of my friends. So that's the sad story. You know, I'm always positive on this channel, and if I'm not, it's usually just me bitching about WoW. So yeah, we'll just kind of end it there. But I felt it was needed in my anniversary story here, because the reality is, I know it's like cliche, because like especially nowadays everyone's like, WoW saved me, but back in the early days I would have been saying WoW saved me, you know, before you know, before mental health issues were really, I don't know, I don't want to say it wrong, but like, let's just say someone has a bad day and they consider it a mental health issue, you know? Like, yeah, back then, mental health issues were serious fucking shit, you know? Now, anything's a mental health issue. So, you know, back then, yeah, WoW had totally saved me. It took a while, you know, it was a very dark time, and it wasn't like, you know, I was playing WoW and it saved me instantly. It took years. But it was something to keep my mind on. And because of, I guess, its addicting nature and the fact that it was really good content at that time, it just kept me going to where more and more each day, I would not think about what happened. Granted, I was already playing before those issues came into play, but it helps with our story today because it helps understand how much I actually needed WoW in my life. You know, I was going through a lot, and I was, you know, young. I wasn't a kid young, but I was basically a young adult, just kind of like starting out, you know. I was in college, and yeah, like, you know, I also was a young mother at that time. I had all my children by the time WoW launched, and my last child was a month before the launch day is when I had my last child. So this is the list on screen of my favorite expansions to least favorite, and so I thought we're not going to go in that particular list, but I thought we would kind of just, you know, talk about each expansion and what I enjoyed about it. Overall, I have so many memories with this game because, well, one, WoW was my first social media. Yeah, so, you know, Facebook had just kind of launched, but I've still really, like, I don't think I even joined Facebook until like a couple of years after it launched. Like, yeah, I knew about it, but I've never been a social media person. So even, like, I remember prior to that, I had a MySpace, and I was even bad at that. Like, I've just never been good with social media. WoW was basically my social media. I was pretty active in the guilds. Ironically, I was pretty social, you know, considering the state I was in back then. Yeah, maybe I just needed to be social. Maybe I needed to pretend everything was okay, right? That was back when you loaded the game through discs. I don't know if you guys remember that, but like that was back when midnight launches happened, or midnight releases, which were a lot of fun. My friends and I would stand in line to get the game, and we would just camp out all night. Yeah, it was kind of like when you go get concert tickets back in the day. And this is like something you only will understand if you're older, because no one does that now, right? Everything's so digital, you just buy tickets online. But back in the day, you camped out for concerts and new games and all that. So yeah, I was camping out pretty much every expansion to be one of the first in the store to get the game, because there was a lot of people playing back then. One, it was cool to just have that adventure, but honestly, the major reason was to ensure you got the game, right? Because they could sell out. And yeah, that definitely was the number one reason you did it. And yeah, it just kind of became more of a memory later on when you realize that that's not the way things are done anymore. Also, it was at a time where most of us were playing on dial-up. There was like dial-up and DSL, like dial-up and high speed. So yeah, so that made raids a lot more interesting. And then you can't forget about the WoW commercials, which I have done a video on. I will link that at the end of this video. So yeah, definitely loved all the WoW commercials. Also, another thing too is all the merchandise I got back in the day. Like, I still have my authenticators. I still have my Visa card. Which a lot of people might not know existed. You can't get them anymore, right? Another great reason that I'm glad I was older around then is because if I'd been a kid, clearly I wouldn't have had a World of Warcraft credit card. Funny part is I never actually used it. I think I used it like once. I only got it because of the card. And then, of course, there was the South Park episode that I feel like the South Park episode is how, I don't want to use the word normal, but let's just say how the TV people found out about WoW. Yeah, I think WoW commercials and the South Park episode really opened more people up to the game. Now, as for being a female gamer, I know it's a huge deal now, but back then it wasn't. No one cared if you were a male or a female in the game. Like, yeah, no one really gave a shit as long as you were fun to play with and you did your role in raids and stuff. Yeah, wasn't really the deal that people make it out to be nowadays. But I will say there was a select few of us. There really wasn't a whole lot of women WoW gamers. I knew none. I only knew of myself back then. Everyone I played with, from vanilla to Lich King, was a guy. I definitely think that Lich King helped women find WoW. Not to say I'm the only one from vanilla or anything. I'm sure there's others, but there is a select few of us. There's not many of us. And I often believed, like, when people make comments nowadays about, you know, like, it was always a meme, women don't play WoW. But I always laughed at it because WoW is probably more appealing to a woman than it is a man. I'm just gonna say. Especially, like, let's say maybe it was more appealing to a man in, like, vanilla and BC, but let's be real. From the time Lich King dropped, I think it was more appealing to a woman because that is around the time of achievements and transmog and pets, and, like, I guess pets came where you could always collect pets. Transmog, we had to wait for the collection tab, really, but I think the minute the collection tab came into play, that was more a woman's game. Then, yeah, I have always, and I know both men and women collect in WoW, so do not take this the wrong way, guys, but I have always not been surprised when a woman talks about collecting a pet or a mount or a transmog. Yeah, in my eyes, a woman collects and a guy fights, right? Like that, yeah. And like I said, don't take that the wrong way, guys, because I, as the female WoW gamer I am, do everything in this game. I fight, I'm in raids, I'm in M+, I'm in PvP, I'm collecting. Like, it's at a point where you just do everything. But that is how I always saw it, like, back in the day, right? Nowadays, everyone just kind of does everything. Because I definitely think there are way more women WoW players nowadays. Are there more than guys? No. I think WoW is still dominated by men, but there is definitely way more women that do play nowadays, which shouldn't be surprising. Like, it's 20 years old, you know, and we're in 2024, a time where online anything is like your 80 to 90-year-old grandmother is online doing something, right? Possibly even playing video games herself. So yeah. I think we're just in a world where everything's so online that it's not far-fetched for people to get into gaming because they're already there seeing like articles and stuff and advertisements, and yeah, I think them just being on maybe Facebook probably put them into the gaming world. And yeah, things are just a little more in your face now. Okay, so let's talk about the base game and the expansions now. Starting with vanilla. Vanilla is, of course, the best version. You know, I have always said that if you take expansions out of the mix, or even if you put them in the mix, my favorite expansion is BC and always has been. But the base game is the best. Vanilla WoW, I really enjoyed for reasons that you can't experience anymore. But one, we were all new. It was a new game. So starting, like, I will just say, if you ever want to be part of an MMO when it first starts, keep an eye out on new MMOs, because there is nothing like it. You know, it is the best feeling to be starting this big adventure. Granted, we didn't know how far I was gonna go back then, but it is very fun to have this adventure where everyone is new. You're not walking in late. You're there the same time everyone else is. You're all noobs, basically, and you're all learning together. And I think that's what made it kind of probably more sociable. Not only the time frame of WoW back then, but I think it was that no one knew anything. There was no Wowhead. There was a browser that was like Wowhead, but it came a little after, and it wasn't really that good, to be fair. Like, it had some info, but yeah, it wasn't like how Wowhead is nowadays. And yeah, so you kind of needed each other. You needed to kind of socialize together to figure out what was going on in the game. Right? You just couldn't find out as much info on Google as you can now. And yeah, so that's really what I love about it. Some of my best gamer friends came from that time frame. We played together in vanilla. I still talk to them to this day. Some of them are still in the guild that this druid here runs on retail. And yeah, it just was a really great time. I remember I was in a competition with this other Boomkin druid, because I've been a Boomkin druid since 2004. Like, yeah. And we were having a competition of who could get to 60 first. And I remember it was so effing close. Not gonna lie, instead of going out one day, I stayed home and I leveled like nonstop that day to beat him. Yeah. Yeah, that is how close it was. I still consider Vanilla WoW the best version of World of Warcraft. I liked that it took longer to level. I liked that every little thing you did meant something. Everything seemed like a huge accomplishment. And I know there's people out there that are like, you know, it's weird because you got the same people that bitch about the accomplishments wanting the accomplishments, right? But I know a lot of people out there say that, you know, you shouldn't feel like you need to be accomplished in a video game. And I'm just gonna say, you feel how you want to feel. You know, there is nothing wrong with feeling accomplished in a video game. And if anything, it helps you grow. One thing I would like to add to our topic of WoW and how it's helped me over the years is I've learned lots from it. So vanilla was great. Lots more I could say on that, but I'm trying to make this video like, you know, less than an hour, hopefully. So that's vanilla. BC, Best expansion. I love it. I think one of the biggest reasons BC is such a great expansion in my eyes is because it really brought the most an expansion ever has. It brought actual new, like, next level content. We went from not being able to get off the ground with our mounts to flying. That was a huge thing. I still remember out in Netherstorm, there was that one dungeon. There was a few actually where you fly up to go to them. Yeah, it was like Arcatraz and all of that shit. I was, of course I've mained a druid since 2004. So I had flight before my friends, right? So because the druid could get it 2 levels before. And so I was actually chauffeuring people up to the dungeon. I would just like fly someone to the dungeon, fly back to the meeting stone, fly them to the dungeon, fly back. Because back then you had to have flying to do those dungeons. So yeah, that is definitely a memorable moment when it comes to BC. I just remember always bringing my friends up to the dungeon. Also, BC was when I made my first Horde character, because all of vanilla, it was only my druid. My main alliance has always been my druid. Keep in mind, I do actually play her all the time, so it makes sense. And my main Horde character is my Blood Elf Warlock that I made in BC, and she is the most played, so that that makes sense over there as well. At that point, I'd only made one character per expansion because it was only my Blood Elf Warlock in BC, and ironically, I actually played a little more of the Warlock than the Druid in BC. And I guess this brings us into Wrath of the Lich King expansion, but when the Wrath of the Lich King expansion came out, and then later on they brought achievements in the mix, I had realized that my lock on Horde side had a higher achievement score than my Druid because of all the stuff that was going on in the beginning of Lich King, because she was a tailorer. And one of my memorable moments with Wrath of the Lich King was doing Lore Master. Back then, my lock needed this achievement. This wasn't even like optional for me, really. It was an achievement I had to do. It was a requirement for the epic tailoring patterns. And I was, my lock is tailoring and enchanting. So that was the memorable moment for Wrath of the Lich King. Well, there were tons of memorable moments in each expansion, but like, trust me, this video is gonna be like 2 hours long if I tell you everything that like has a memory attached to it. So I'm trying to like put it to just one big memorable moment per expansion. And Lore Master definitely was it for Wrath. Lore Master took a long time. That is a lot of quests. So next we have 2010, which was Cataclysm. This is where I started becoming an altaholic. Cataclysm, honestly, not right at the start, but I would say midpoint of Cataclysm, I started actually disliking it. It was my first disliked expansion. It was always, for a long time, it was like, I've always kept a list of like my favorite to least favorite, and Cataclysm was always like the most hated, I guess. But it wasn't really hated, it just was the only, the first disliked expansion. I loved Vanilla BC and Wrath. Like, I never had any complaints during those three ones. But Cataclysm is definitely when I became more into alts. So at this point, I was actually doing more on the alts. Up until this moment, it basically was my druid and my lock. You know, my druid has been part of every expansion, and my lock, I played a good chunk in both BC and Wrath on my lock on Horde side. So I had made a bunch of characters. My mage was actually the next character, Draenei character, and then, you know, Cataclysm brought Worgen and Goblin, so I had made a Goblin Shaman over on Horde side. The Worgen is actually another lock. Did I do the Worgen right away? I can't totally remember now that I think about it, but if I picked a Warlock on it, yeah, chances are I probably already built every fucking class up. Yeah, because like I said, Cataclysm was the expansion I started doing a lot of alts. And back then, having all those alts was a proud moment. Nowadays, everyone has like 20 bazillion alts, so much that people have second accounts, right? But back then, having even 5 characters meant that you spent hours and hours leveling them. Yeah. So it was actually quite the accomplishment. I think having a bunch of alts stopped being an accomplishment when Legion launched. Yeah. I think it was up until the launch of Legion that it just became a little too easy mode to have a bunch of alt characters because the leveling had really sped up by then. So yeah, that would be my memorable moment with Cataclysm, is bringing the alt family in the picture that I have nowadays. Yeah. Most of it came from Cata. Cataclysm is, well, between Cataclysm and Myst of Pandaria, which we're gonna hop into now, I guess, I would say between those two, I had every race, every class, and both factions. Yeah. Because Myst of Pandaria was definitely also another alt expansion. My memorable moment with Myst of Pandaria, like, realistically, I should say my business, but that's not a game-related moment. That's a real-life accomplishment I had done. But back in Myst of Pandaria, and this is kind of gonna fall in line with me saying that you do develop skills by playing video games, you know, especially in MMO, but I was pretty much always in trade chat, selling services. Yeah, I did it in early expansions too. I've always been a huge profession person. I've only casually been it lately because I hate the way they changed the professions. But from vanilla to, I would say, BFA, I was always selling services, selling professions. You know, I'd have my rogue out on, you know, the top of, well, it was mainly my horde rogue that did it, but my horde rogue would always be at the top of the building in Ogrimmar, opening lockboxes, and then my druid would be, you know, my druid on Alliance side was always in trade chat, selling enchants and stuff. So I think that, like, that's definitely my most memorable moment with Myst of Pandaria. No, it's not pet battling. I didn't like the idea of pet battling. I didn't even do it in Myst of Pandaria. That was a feature that I was like, you gotta be shitting me, you know? I just avoided it. Yeah, it wasn't until later when I realized that there were so many achievements tied to it that I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. But I never have actually liked it. I have always done it for achievement reasons. I still just prefer to have my pets, like, not in combat. They're just cute, not in danger, just chilling. Yeah. 2014 is when Warlords of Draenor came in, and there were no new races for this one, but the garrison was a big deal. Now, I know a lot of people hate on WoD, but I love the garrison. We're literally in it right now. And stream always sees me in the garrison. We've, for the most part, start in the garrison and end in the garrison. Lately, I've just been like starting and ending at the anniversary event, but that's because, you know, there's a time limited event going on. But you guys see me most of the time, like all my news videos were pretty much from the garrison. So I'm a fan, you know. I really like the garrison because, well, here I feel like it's only right that we actually, you know, see the garrison the way we should, right? So we'll just walk out. But the garrison, to me, you know, I love it for so many reasons. Like here we got, I keep the garrison Christmas themed. In Halloween, around Halloween time, I'll swap it to Halloween decorations, but my favorite is Christmas. And then also, I have a lot of things in the garrison. So, if, you know, plus I love that the pets roam around here. And then there's the jukebox here. This is how we're hearing the song you're hearing right now. And then there's the pet area, which is so beneficial because there is one group of pets that is power leveling pets. And then over here, I have the view only black market. And then you got whatever profession stuff you want over here. Up here is the auction house. So, auction house there. And down here I have the bank. You know, so we have our bank, the void storage, guild bank. And then these don't really matter. Back in WoD they did, because over in here, the cave, you could be not a miner and go in and get minerals, which is really nice. So you could just be farming for your mining guys, right? And then, of course, the fishing here. And then there's also the garden that you could be doing that same thing, you know, just gathering flowers for your characters that require it, right? Which was really nice for me because one thing I did in Cata, just quickly going back to that expansion, is that was the expansion that brought Inscription. And during Vanilla BC and Wrath, I was an enchanter / herbalist. But when they brought out Inscription, I wanted the new profession, and so that's when she became Enchanting Inscription, which she has stayed that way since then. And when I made that decision, I kind of made the decision that someone else was gonna have to farm her materials for Inscription because of me dropping herbalist. So when WoD came out, that was kind of perfect. I was able to just collect this for myself. Nowadays, and pretty much since Cata, my mage funds her Inscription because my mage is alchemy. So yeah, she funds it. So the garrison would be my memorable moment. I know a lot of people hate on the garrison, but I loved it. So it was perfect for me because I was kind of pretty antisocial around this time. And I kind of wanted an atmosphere where people couldn't see me and they couldn't message me and I could just chill on my own. And yeah. And that's what the garrison brought to me. It was, I know it's it's pretty much the reason people bitch about, but it worked for me. I enjoyed having like a city, I guess, that was just me, just me in the city, like detached from the rest of the players. I really enjoyed that. Now, keep in mind, like, I was raiding through all these expansions, so, like, raids were memorable too, dungeons were memorable, hanging out with people was memorable. I'm just giving you, like, one major memorable moment here. So next is a Legion. Now, Legion is memorable for many, many different reasons. Legion, technically, in my eyes, was the beginning of my content creation. I guess technically I started in WoD. Legion was in alpha when I decided to make the plunge and start doing content. I do remember I was doing alpha streams back then. And that's how my content started, was from me basically doing alpha Legion streams. But WoD was the current expansion, but it was at the end. And it was kind of a good time to do content creation because, and I don't mean this against WoW or anything, but I was past the best moments of WoW, right? The game was starting a downhill trend, and yeah. And I've always said that there's no way in hell I could be the creator I am now back in the best days of WoW, because I edit my own videos, right? I would have never wanted to take the time to not play the game and edit videos instead when it was at its prime. Yeah. Recording, whatever. You can play and record at the same time. That doesn't affect your play time, but editing definitely does. And so I think we did it all really well. I was past the best moments. Would it have been cool to have footage? I guess, I don't know. But it would have never happened without me paying an editor back then. I would have never even wanted to do it. Yeah. Because nowadays, I like game sharing with you guys. But back then, I wanted to experience it all, right? And, yeah. Even now, I kinda, you guys might notice I'm doing a lot more unedited stream type. Like, I just put it all in stream and load it up on the channel. Yeah, I still edit, but I definitely do less than I used to before it was like editing every day. So I would say but that's not really a game moment. That's more, that's where the Mist of Darkness channel kind of started. But it is memorable. I guess Demon Hunter, obviously, would have been the memorable one of Legion. I was still maining my Druid, but I had made the Demon Hunter. I was very interested in tanking with the Demon Hunter, so that's what I did. I was tank that expansion. And yeah, so that would be the memorable moment. Legion, I also believe, was the first expansion to have like a shit ton of mounts. Yeah, I think that's where, like, prior to Legion, I feel like we had a normal amount of mounts come into expansions. And then when Legion started, we had extreme amounts come in. Like, yeah, I feel like that was the start of it feeling like all you do is mount farm. Like, you just almost like you don't have time to do anything other than mount farm. There was one really proud moment with Legion that I did. I was so proud of it that I made a screenshot and put it on Instagram to more or less not prove, but the proof would be there if I needed, but more or less, let's just say proof that I did every single class hall mount on every character in its current expansion before Legion ended. And that was a lot of work. That should be my #1 accomplishment, favorite memory from Legion, because that was hard fucking work. Back then, breaching the tomb wasn't skippable, so you had to do breaching the tomb on every single character, because while it was account bound at the time, the quest wouldn't show up unless it saw that character did it, right? So that's what made that so tough to do before it ended, because those didn't show up right off the bat. So it was, it wasn't like it was there the whole expansion. And then my goal was to finish it before the end. So yeah, that definitely was like the #1 accomplishment. Here's the Instagram post that I did for it. So 2018, BFA. BFA, I feel like BFA started strong. I didn't mind islands and all that. At this point, BFA took over Cataclysm's most hated expansion. It became the most hated. And the reason I had put it into that is because it really was that I had a friend that hadn't played all year. He came in, he did a couple of world quests, and he had the item level I was wearing, and I was raiding. And not only was I raiding, but I had at least heroic on me. So that's where my issue came in. I'm like, well, what am I wasting my time raiding for then, if someone can just do some world quests and, look like they're raiding? So that was kind of, yeah. And I was annoyed by that, and it worried me on the future of gearing. Granted, that did kind of come into middle of BFA, so I would say, as far as memorable, because we can't use a bad memory as a memorable, but for BFA, I guess I'd say the allied races. I had a lot of fun playing all those allied races. Okay, so here is the tab for allied races. And yeah, you can, I'll just scroll up here. So yeah, it definitely looks like I didn't complete them right away, but it does look like they were, at least some were completed in BFA. 2022. Let's see. Void and Valpera, those were in BFA because Shadowlands released in October of 2020. So that was just before the release. So I did get a couple done. And yeah, I definitely think that was probably my most excited for that. At the end, they had their very first KSM mount. I did get it. So yeah, I guess that would be my most memorable for BFA. Okay, so next expansion is Shadowlands. So Shadowlands gets a lot of hate, and I had my doubts, but for one reason and one reason only, I had hope for it, and that's because it was gonna be the first darkness type expansion. And I'd been wanting WoW to do that forever, to have something super dark that, brings a lot of evil into the world. And they did it, but I think they just could have gone a little darker, honestly. Like, I think it just wasn't dark enough. Overall, I just found it overwhelming. Shadowlands brought, because of the Covenants, I was not a fan of the Covenants to begin with. But because of the Covenants, they had so many mounts attached to it. And that's just one system. That's one grouping of mounts, right? That's not even the rest of the expansion. So that one grouping was just so overwhelming. You know, I remember Shadowlands, I would make jokes on how you need to be unemployed to properly play it. and it's like, you can say that about WoW its entire run, but you really say it for Shadowlands because you just didn't have time to do everything. You know, it's a weird complaint to have, but yes, I just was very overwhelmed by the amount of content. And keep in mind, like my druid as well as the alts attached, I have 40,000 hours in this game. I have been no-lifing this game since 2004. You know, so it's not like I don't put a lot of time into this game. That was an overwhelming expansion for a person that plays 8 to 10 hours a day. You know, it used to be more in fucking vanilla. I used to do like 12-hour, sometimes even longer days. All depend on my work schedule, right? If I find it overwhelming, I can just imagine what the everyday player, like an average player that isn't isolating themselves from the world, would be doing, right? I never really hated Shadowlands, but it took over BFA as the most hated because I just felt like I didn't have time to complete stuff in that expansion, which is enough for me to put it down the row. Because like I said, I put a lot of hours into every expansion, so there's no reason I shouldn't have enough time to do things. That was just way too much content. And a lot of it has to do with like restrictions too, you know, like it wouldn't have been so bad if at that time you could have done it all on one character, but the feature to be able to be part of all of the content or all of those covenants on one character wasn't always there. It's a feature that came in later, right? And yeah, so for a long time you were restricted and having to go through hoops to do things. But I will say, Shadowlands, like them overwhelming me like that almost was a blessing, because after feeling so overwhelmed by the Shadowlands content, I stopped caring about shit. Yeah, I stopped making sure I was always doing KSM. I stopped making sure I was always raiding. I stopped mount farming as much. It was an eye-opener, really. You know, I love my WoW and all, but it was an eye-opener on how much time I waste collecting things that take forever to collect and then become easier later on. Okay, so Shadowlands. I almost forgot to tell you guys what my memorable moment of Shadowlands was. I'm just gonna say Torghast. I loved Torghast. I know people ended up hating it. I think the reason I loved it and continued to love it is because I didn't force myself to do it. A lot of the people that hate it either hated it right off the bat, or they hated it because they were doing it every week to get stuff that they needed to have done weekly, right? And I just kind of did Torghast whenever I felt like it. Yeah, I was never in a rush, and yeah, I think it did help that I felt so overwhelmed with the Covenants, so it was kind of like I don't got time to do Torghast every week, you know? Like I said, the overwhelmingness of that expansion changed my tune on how I play the game. So, moving on to Dragonflight. So, Dragonflight... Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I've never disliked an expansion as much as I disliked Dragonflight, but I still love my WoW, you know, even in the disliked expansions, I still have loved my WoW. Dragonflight really turned me into a little more casual with the game, because that's around the time when they started throwing mounts that you had from previous means, you know, limited time mounts type deal on the trading post. Tyrael's Charger, which was probably my most rare mount, really, ended up just being sold on the shop. And yeah, and then there was more to that list, and I get it, guys. For you guys that missed out, you're happy it happened. I'll admit I was a little pissed with Tyrael's Charger, but I'm like, whatever, you know. It was hard to be like super pissed because some of my friends were getting it, and I was glad they were getting it. I just wasn't glad that the whole WoW universe was getting it. You know how it is. Like, you know, you always want your friends to get stuff. But what really did it in was when, you remember in Shadowlands, there was the Fated Mount, which was a time-limited thing, and you actually raided to get it. And then the very next expansion, which would have been Dragonflight, they put it on a vendor for like 3 tokens, which 3 tokens was super easy to get. And that was kind of like my final straw. I was like, okay, well, they're not just doing it for time limited items. They're now doing it for content you do in game. And then they're just going to hand it out for free. It's one thing to just hand out something for free that left the game, you know, 10 years ago or more, right? But it's a whole other if they're handing something out for free that you did like a year ago in game. So that, you know, that's like them handing out gladiator shit, which they have started to do, by the way. And yeah, so that was my moment where I was like, okay, you know, the game is almost at its 20-year mark. Maybe it's time to just be a little more casual and not care so much about stuff. So Dragonflight really was that. As far as a memorable moment of Dragonflight, this is gonna be a tough one, I'm not gonna lie, because like I said, it was probably my most casual expansion. There's really not a whole lot I like with it. I'm trying to think of something off the bat that can qualify as memorable, and to be fair, I'm just not thinking of anything that I liked with Dragonflight. We're gonna have to skip on that one. There is nothing memorable with Dragonflight. I'm sorry, guys. Like, I can't even think of something that I actually enjoyed doing a lot in Dragonflight. So yeah, hard skip on that one. Which brings us to the current expansion. So the War Within, it's not complete, so it's kind of hard to give it a full review, but it already has been bumped up above Dragonflight. So Dragonflight is still my most hated. I put War Within above because the one thing that I really kind of disliked with Dragonflight was that you started with dragon riding and you were forced into fast speed, right? And like, not gonna lie, I'd rather they do what they always did and have us stuck to the ground than force me into super fast speed and not be able to control the different levels of speed. War Within gave us that right off the bat, so it instantly won in my eyes. Like, it instantly got immediate points because it wasn't forcing a certain speed. And honestly, it's not a bad expansion. Like, I'm just gonna say, since Dragonflight, I play other games, you know? I've always kind of played other games, but I've really juggled it with WoW a lot. But now, I I will legit push WoW to the side for like a playthrough, you know? Like, yeah, I am a different WoW player nowadays, and that definitely started with Dragonflight. You know, I think the idea was in my head near the end of Shadowlands, but it really was Dragonflight that pushed me to some other games. So yeah. So those are the expansions. Can't really give a memorable thing with War Within right now. But if I were to just kind of call something out, the guild is the memorable thing. We do delves every Saturday. They're fun to do with guildies, you know. They're okay solo, but they're more fun when you do them with someone. And yeah, so that might have extended, me going over every expansion might have actually extended the video a bit, but I just wanted, you know, those expansions shape how I felt about WoW all this time, and I like every expansion for its own reason. Well, most anyway. I guess I couldn't name a single thing with Dragonflight, but you know, that is why it's at the bottom of the list, right? So yeah. But with every other one, I can think of a positive to it. And to be fair, there is a positive to Dragonflight. It's just not an in-game positive. But the positive is that it actually showed me that I don't need to only play one game, right? Like, yeah, it showed me, you know, once you stop caring about FOMO, it really allows you to step away a little longer, because you're never gonna play much of anything if you step away for a day, you know? But now, if I wanted to, I could step away for like a week or two to play, you know, to play a game start to finish and then come back, and, you know, like it's not a big deal. So that is my story on WoW. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the lengthiness of this. I just wanted to have a little anniversary video for you guys. No matter what I've said throughout the expansion little portion of this video, I love WoW, always will love WoW. I am grateful to WoW for helping me through some bad times, and I'm grateful that I just love it. It's a game where if you don't like an expansion, you do something else. Like, I'm sure for a lot of people, because I don't think I was alone in disliking Dragonflight. You know, I think there was a lot of us, especially those of us that have played since 2004 or even since Lich King. Like, people that have played for a while, I think you saw a change in Dragonflight. Not only was there the changes that I mentioned, but it was a lot more cartoony than it usually is. Drakthur, I guess you would have had to really like Drakthur to like Dragonflight, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. So yeah, but even through the bad times, you can always play other content. That's the glory of WoW. And that is how WoW keeps people. Because if you don't like an expansion, go do stuff in old expansions. You know, that's the glory of achievements, mounts, pets, toys, anything you're collecting. That is the glory of that, because it's kind of motivation to have you return to old content. And even more now that transmogs are available to be earned on one single character for the most part. I feel like people always looked at me weird when I say this, but you don't need the game to be good to play it. You know? And I know that sounds stupid, but it's true. There's so much to do in this game that if you don't like the current expansion, then just don't play it. Play it like in 2 years or something. Go back to old content, the content you enjoy doing, and work on achievements, you know, work on mount farming. Like, this game is so huge. You can do anything, you know? There's also PvP you can be doing, you know, or whatever. You just do whatever. Like, especially nowadays. Earlier in the game, it was a little tougher to do everything. Like PvP, for example. That was back when they were using resilience gear. And so you needed to actually gear with PvP, not like today where you got like random people going in raid sets into the battleground, which is completely normal nowadays. But back then, like, they'd boot you for that. If you went in and you were not in PvP gear, like, they actually looked. They would check you out, and if you didn't have actual PvP gear, you were out. Yeah, you definitely needed it, and yeah. So it was a little different. There's a lot of different things from back then, but yeah. So anyway, I don't want to drag this video out too long because I can see that it's a little lengthy, unedited, and I feel like I've done good with this recording. I don't imagine there's much I'm cutting out of this, so I think it's still gonna be a long video. But I hope you enjoyed. You know, definitely leave some memorable moments you've had in the game in the comments section. Here's to many more years. Who knows how long World of Warcraft will last. I've always said that I will probably die before it dies, but you know, we'll see. But I do think I'm right in that because they, like, let's be real, you know, we saw Classic come in 2019. That was kind of their first move in redoing the game. So yeah, they'd probably just keep doing that, right? Happy anniversary, World of Warcraft. Thank you for being the best game ever. And I mean that. I know some people are probably giggling. Oh, WoW sucks. WoW sucks. But I look at the big picture. Even if I have not liked the past few expansions, overall, WoW has made me happy. And yeah, I think any game that you play for 20 years, obviously it must have been a great game, you know? Like, yeah. Like, most people don't even keep their marriages for that long. There's always good things that happen and bad things that happen, and WoW has done more good than bad in my eyes. So, I still consider it to be the best game. You know, everyone has their own opinion, of course, but WoW has been my favorite game since 2004. I have a lot of other games I really like, but World of Warcraft is my favorite game. So thanks, Blizzard, for keeping my favorite game going. And thanks, guys, for continuing to be part of the channel. Without World of Warcraft, I might have never even become a content creator. WoW was the inspiration. It also was my friend. My friend, I would always guide him. He'd always ask me how to do something in WoW, and I'm the person that can tell you without looking it up, right? Like I've played the game so much that I just know the answers when it's like not current content stuff, like when I've had time to like learn the routes and stuff. So you know, I would just tell him the answer just like that, and he'd be like, oh, you should make guides. And that's how the channel started. Yeah, I'll be completely honest, I wasn't even thinking of being a YouTuber back then. Yeah, I literally just lived and breathed WoW. I didn't even go on YouTube. I didn't watch streams. Like, I didn't care about any of that shit. I only cared about WoW. Like, yeah, I was one of those gamers that, like, didn't really associate with much outside of it. You know, nowadays I have multiple channels, but it all started with World of Warcraft, so I don't know if any any of my content would exist if it hadn't been for this game. So thanks for supporting the channel. If you are new here, hopefully you'll I never shout it out, but hopefully you will think about following the channel, subscribing, whichever way you want to word it. And here's to many, many more WoW videos. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.